a Sapphire Running Zone podcast.
Hi everyone, this is Tim from the Sapphire Running Zone, and welcome to another of our podcasts where we chat to runners about events that they've done around the country. And today we are joined by Stuart, who is a very regular runner. He does lots of events, and he's just done the Manchester Marathon, so we're going to focus on that. But he's done a speedy Manchester Marathon, so we're going to talk all things quicker running as well today. But welcome, Stuart. How long was it after you first put on a pair of running shoes before you got into your first event, and how did you progress from 5Ks through to the marathon?
When I was running on my own, it was generally just 5Ks because usually I was looking for an opportunity to finish running. So very much the extra distance came from running with other people. I wasn't a particularly social person at the time, and I was a bit shy to meet people. But then I realised actually, as you started to run, it was a great opportunity to get to know people very informally in a relaxed atmosphere. So I'd say that was the added bonus really of running, is that I started to meet other people, and that helped me to go further distances. So I didn't start with the park runs. I started with more 10K type races, and at our club, which is Amstel Athletic Flyers, we have an annual 10K event in April. Started that in 2021. Was probably doing about a 54-minute 10K at the time. And then over the years, managed to now get to a sub 40 on the 10K pace. I entered in the Milton Keynes Marathon in 2021. And because of COVID, what started as a 16-week training plan effectively became a 32-week training plan, as it was cancelled on 2 occasions. And for that, I did my first marathon at Milton Keynes, not the most exciting place to do a marathon, but it was around a 4:35 type time to do that marathon. So I was just chuffed to bits really to finish. And then really over the last 5 years, I've focused on trying to do about 2 marathons a year, probably 2 or 3 halves a year, and then slotting in the park runs in between. But I'd say actually I turned 50 in October of last year. And since I turned 50, I've PB'd all distances, 5K, 10K, half marathon and marathon. So I take real pleasure from that, knowing that with running, it's something you can improve with age, effectively.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah. So what do you put down the improved times to then? Have you changed your approach, or is it just because you've got a bit more experience and you've got a bit more of an insight into how to do it?
I think it's a bit of a combination of things. So I think when you start running, you don't think so much about things like your form and your technique, your breathing, your movements. So some of the stats we get today from your watches and your heart rate monitors help you realize you're not necessarily always running particularly well balanced. So I think the discipline of running, thinking about your technique, thinking about how you run up hills, down hills, how you sort of move the pressure depending on what shoes you're wearing as well. So I would say it's more thought through rather than just going out and running. It's actually more detailed and thought through process. I think in terms of the longer distance running and keeping the pace, what I have switched to do, and I did this in my last marathon, is stop thinking about the whole distance and effectively just think about 1 mile at a time. Get that 1 mile right, and then keep moving to the next mile. So it was the first marathon I'd done where the only screen I had on my watch was the current lap as opposed to the total distance and time. And I actually, from a mindset perspective, that really helped me sort of stay focused and not stress and panic about how far I still had to go or whether I was behind my target time. So I think mental discipline as much as the physical side of things. So yes, I do train more. I do try and mix a bit of running with a bit of strength training, but I'd say it's more the mental approach that's improved over those years.
Are you doing lots of hill work and reps, speed work, that kind of stuff?
Hill work, yes, I'm mixing it up really. So Tuesday's usually an interval session, which can be hills or, just some short bursts. Thursday's normally more tempo. And then your Sunday or Saturday long run with maybe one other easy run. So I did switch on this current training block from 5 runs a week to 4. So I had a bit more recovery time. but I did slot into strength sessions as well. And I genuinely think they've made a real difference, and also stopped me having I didn't have any real niggles during the training block from training. And I think the strengths help that. So almost like complementing any post-run stretching with some strength, got me getting some of the Achilles type challenges I'd had in the past.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's a lot of people are not doing strength work at all, particularly people that are starting out. I think marathon training is all
Mm.
about just running, and obviously it is pretty important that you do the running, but strength training is absolutely key, particularly the more you do, because obviously it does put a fair bit of pressure on your legs over time. Now, you've just done Manchester. What did you do in the build up to Manchester? Did you do an event, and what was your sort of training like for Manchester?
So I entered Wokingham half. I then got a bit excited and also entered Cambridge half, which is a personal favourite of mine. I've done it for the last few years, and then the opportunity came up through my work organisation CGI to support a charity half for a charity called Zoe's Place in Liverpool. So I did the Liverpool half. So completely unorthodox approach to marathon prep, doing 3 halves. Thankfully, I PB'd the first one, which was Wokingham. So it then took the pressure off for Cambridge and Liverpool. Cambridge is always just about the event and being in a great city. Liverpool was all about running with colleagues, supporting a really great charity. So there were different types of prep races. Generally, I'd stuck to my plan quite tightly. I did actually move for the first time from a plan I had on a spreadsheet to an app effectively to support the training. So it went straight onto your watch and tracked sort of how you were doing it. And I found that really valuable. So I trusted it for the marathon block rather than reverting to maybe what I'd done previously. And it did balance the training with the recovery quite nicely. Yeah, I did other things, which was like started also taking things like creatine as well, because I know that obviously helps some of your performance, and a lot of runners use it. But really, just continuing to make sure I kept well hydrated, and I lost a few kilograms as well. It's like probably my lightest weight in terms of marathon training. So again, multiple things coming together, but enjoying some of the training as well. So particularly as we've met and spoke of before, the Liverpool half was great because it wasn't just about the run; it was about the event, the city, the charity, running with colleagues. So probably the highlight really of the training block.
So last weekend, Manchester Marathon.
Yes.
What was your sort of take on the course? Let's start off with the course.
Yeah, so it's fantastic that you start from the Old Trafford football stadium. So I think that, whether you like Manchester United or not, I think to start from such an iconic football ground is great, next to the cricket ground as well. And then you sort of run almost slightly downhill towards the city centre. So you've got the nice Manchester skyline in the background. The support on all sides of the street was really great. And then you move, you sort of come back past Old Trafford, you move out towards more residential areas. Um, and really, the halfway point, you were at Altrincham, and mentally, if you get to Altrincham, it's going to be tough because you run up a big hill to get into Altrincham centre. But the crowds at the top of the hill are amazing. The music's amazing. And even though it is uphill, that really takes your mind off it. But you're halfway. And when you're coming down the hill out the back of Altrincham, you're heading back into the city. There's lots of great music along the way. You finish in Manchester at the university, which is a change in the last 2 years. You used to finish back at Old Trafford. So they've taken a similar approach to London where they'll transport bags to the end. So you finish on Peter Street next to Manchester University, very nice historic building. And really gives you that sense of achievement as you run past those nice landmarks, really. And as I say, I think I've done London before. Obviously, it's crazy the amount of support at London, but I think Manchester is getting there in terms of the volume of support on the course and the enthusiasm of the supporters as well. So um, it's quite an emotional finish as well because you have to walk. So as you're walking to get your bag, you're thinking about how your race has gone. And for me, because it was, it went so much better than I expected. Your emotions always hit quite hard once you finally get over that finish line.
So what was the start area like? It was a wave start, isn't it? Like London. Was it as clearly signposted and as well organised?
Yeah, it's pretty impressive that it's such a big field. I think it's 46,000 field this year. But you start, whereas London you might have 5, 6 start points. Everyone starts at the same point, and they gradually filter each wave through around 2 to 3,000 people in each wave, and you will move forward from one block to a next block, and then you get to the main road just in front of Old Trafford, where you can see the city skyline. So it did move very well. There's the usual challenge of everyone trying to work out when the last toilet stop's going to be and how close to the start line they can get before they're not going to have access to the toilet. But actually, when you do start, there's a 10-minute gap between each wave. So you've pretty much, after about a mile and a half, you've pretty much got an open road. And being Manchester, they obviously start with Manchester music as well. So I think I started with Stone Roses as an example. So it really just gets you in the mood to get into the race.
In terms of on-course entertainment, then you mentioned there were bands along the way. Was it pretty much every mile or so that there was something going on?
I'd say every 1 to 2 miles some music. There was other people improvising with music as well. Of the 26-mile course, I'd probably say you had maybe 2 miles where you actually got some quiet time, and generally I appreciate that small gap where you just get some peace and quiet because your head's getting a bit your head's getting quite full of all of the emotion, the enthusiasm, the noise. But mostly, yeah, every few miles there was entertainment, really good on the drinks as well. Bottles at Manchester still, so it's very, very easy to get refreshment. And you couldn't fault actually the organisation, because it's not of the scale of London in terms of the number of start points. So the fact that they get all of the people through in around about, I think everyone's up and running by around 11 o'clock, with starting at 9 o'clock for the first wave, and then you've just got support all through the course. And we had the bonus of a really nice day, but temperature not really getting above about 12 degrees. So it was absolutely perfect marathon weather.
Tell us what time you finished and when you realised that you were on for that kind of time.
So I finished 3:09:59. So I trained with a range between about 3:07 and 3:13. My previous PB was 3:19. So I ended up with almost a 10-minute improvement. And I didn't actually know I'd got that time until I stopped my watch at the end. I was literally just watching each lap, making sure for every mile I was around a 7:15 minute pace. I think I managed to average something like about a 7:12 minute pace in the end. So it just got me under that 3:10 mark by 1 second. And I couldn't believe it because I didn't actually, I didn't think I could actually go to that level. So I was waiting for the official result to come through on the text message service, and when that came through, I was really chuffed. But I struggled last year from around mile 14 onwards. So once I got past mile 14 and I was feeling in good shape, it was literally just go 1 mile at a time, keep it at the same time, keep hydrated. I got to around mile 19 and I couldn't have any more gels. Well, that's the last gel I can have. So I stuck to the fueling strategy I planned, with that exception of not having a final gel at, say, mile 22. But by then, the adrenaline kicked in. You knew you were nearly home, and you just had to tick a mile off at a time. So I was really, I've really chuffed with that. It's been in the last 6 months, I've managed to PB all of the distances I've gone for. So I think I think it's just continuing to stay really focused and and not just trying to run faster, but look at the whole package, the mindset, the diet, the weight, um, and the rest as well, as much as anything. So really, really pleased with that time.
God, I should think so. That's a significant improvement over a short period of time. But you put that down to an absolute combination of factors. There's not one thing in there. It's a mix of things.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I think maybe in the past I would have overtrained or would have tried to do a last minute run because I felt I'd missed something. So I think I was probably a little bit more relaxed as well in this training block. If I missed a run, don't panic. Don't just try and squash it into your plan at a later date. Just respect that actually sometimes the rest is almost as good as the training. But it's definitely a mindset because last year I was tired, so I just stopped and walked. And even though I did an okay time, um, it was a mindset thing. So this is a lot more discipline this year. So I put the mental side of running as high as the physical side, because I know a lot of people will be in really good condition, but then they come to marathon day or half marathon day and they just can't stay focused for the distance. So for me, that's the biggest learning for me is however your body's feeling, just keep your mind focused on what you need to do 1 mile at a time.
So prior to the taper, then what was your sort of average mileage in that last month, and what was your longest long run?
So I was doing between 40 and 60 miles a week. My longest run was a 20-mile race. It's a local event with the Bedford Harriers around the countryside hill. So it was a hilly 20 miles. So I did that at 10 miles at sort of comfortable pace, 10 miles at marathon pace. I would have normally have done a 21, 22-mile type long run, but I stopped at 20 this time round. That went pretty well. So I knew the fact that I could hold the marathon pace for those 10 miles when I was in a lot better shape than the previous year. But I do like to have 1 week at least where I hit the 60-mile mark, because at least then you've spent a lot of hours on your feet. Other weeks I was probably averaging more like 45, maybe 50 miles a week.
Okay. And what was your taper like?
So I think for the 2 weeks before, the second week before was down to about 30 miles. So still an interval session, around a 10 or 12-mile long run. And the final week was probably the biggest taper I'd done because it only had two runs that final week. So I did a run on the Tuesday, sort of a mini interval session, and then on the Thursday just a relaxed run. But that's probably the least I've done on a taper week because usually I'd still do maybe 3 or 4 runs. So again, I think it's sort of trust the process that you've done all the hard work in the previous 14 weeks. So trust the process that you're not suddenly going to lose the fitness and ruin your pace by just doing 2 fairly light runs in that last week.
We have a lot of conversations with people around the taper, and it's a really hard period for people to adjust to. There's still a temptation for people to run too much because, like you said, you've done the hard work by then. You're not really going to get a massive amount of gain, but you could get a lot of negatives. And you need just to rest and recover and build your glycogen stores up and get yourself in great shape for the day. And there's a lot of people that don't do that, unfortunately. Um, what's next for you then in terms of races this year, and what have you got planned next year?
I'm going to do a couple of halves later this year. So Manchester half back there. I tend to go back up to Manchester a lot because I have family in that area. So if I can do a run while I'm around there, that would be the first time doing that. I'm currently down to do the Great North Run as well. The number of years I've watched it on TV and saw the amount of people and the atmosphere there feels like it should be one I should get done. But ultimately, rebuilding really to get back to Valencia in December. So probably my favourite marathon, I'd like to say Manchester because it's where I'm from, but I think Valencia's got to be the favourite. So December, get back to there, see if I can beat that 3:10 time. Go with some of the other guys from the running club as well. They're all looking at that one for their PB opportunity. Really good way to finish the year. And obviously means training in the warmer months as well, which is a nice contrast from the spring marathons. Obviously, it gets a bit lonely in November when nobody's training for anything and you're training on your own. But hopefully, the other guys who are doing Valencia will be with me. And then next year, I'd like to look at some different races. So rather than defaulting to Manchester and Valencia and Cambridge for the half, look at some other locations. So I'm very keen to go to Lisbon and maybe do the marathon there as well. See if I can get into Berlin.
Just talk a little bit about the running clubs. I know you've touched on them a couple of times, and it is really interesting how a lot of people go through their marathon training on their own every day, pretty much. You've touched on the social side a little bit earlier. Just what has the running club meant to you?
In a particular training block, we will align with whoever's running a particular race, whether it be Manchester this year or London in previous years. And you actually sort of really get to know that group of 5 or 6 people over the 16 weeks that you're training together. For me, I think it's helped me to become more confident as a person. So I wasn't the most social person before I joined a running club. I was a bit awkward and not that chatty, but actually going and joining a running club, it boosts your confidence as an individual. And then the running part of it naturally comes because you want to go and meet up with those people. You get to know those people during the 16 weeks and you almost build a really good friendship with the people you're training with. You don't normally want to let your running buddies down and not turn up for a run, so it keeps you disciplined. The idea of going out for a 7 a.m. run on your own on a Saturday morning, you may lose interest at 10 o'clock on a Friday night. But once you're committed to run with your running club, I think it just keeps everybody together, keeps everybody focused. For me now, it's a big part of my social life as much as my running life. And I think that's really valuable, that you're spending time with people who've got a really common interest. When we meet other people who don't run, obviously we can probably be quite annoying, always talking about running and the different races we want to do. But I think if you do want to improve, then you should join a running club and you shouldn't be put off by the idea that people might be too fast for you, because generally runners will look after each other. So if you are thinking of joining a running club, I say just give it a go, because you won't regret it. It's a really good way to build friendship but improve your running. And it makes it more of a passion as well, I would say.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just finally, you mentioned your fundraise at the Liverpool half. Just give us a little bit more about your fundraising over the years and what tips you've got for people that are thinking of fundraising in an event.
The big thing for me was charities. I was really passionate about the cause. It made it a lot easier to really push and ask people for support as well. I think for me, starting that process early, it's not being afraid to ask as well. We tend as British people to sometimes be a bit awkward about asking for support in fundraising. But generally, when you tell people who you're doing it for, as long as the cause is something that they can sort of relate to or understand why they should support, then they're usually more than happy to help out. I think it's particularly today as well, trying to use some of the social platforms to help with that charity fundraising. Lots of people will post their charity pages on LinkedIn or Instagram, Facebook, and I think that's the key part of it. So you're not always asking the same people for support, same family members. Colleagues are generally a good source of support as well. So it's really just trying to find a charity you're passionate about. And that you can talk about enthusiastically, rather than maybe a charity you've chosen just because it will get you a place in a race. So think about really what your cause is, and that will also help your training as well. So knowing you're doing something that you really care about, just makes your training even more focused.
Stuart, really appreciate your time. You've come a long way in a very short period of time. You've done brilliantly well to do that kind of time in Manchester, and obviously, I can imagine you're driven by the sub 3 hour marathon. Clearly, you're not far away from going sub 3 if you're doing these kind of times. So maybe Valencia will be the place, given the type of course, the climate. But you've done a brilliant job. You've got a great schedule lined up, and you've also shown the importance of having a target, having another race scheduled before you finish the other one.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this Sapphire Running Zone podcast. Keep checking back as we have lots more podcasts coming soon.